Had enough? We got through it. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Just give you a quick rundown of the day. Had the pick 115 there in the fourth round. And that one we had a couple opportunities to drop back, similar to the last couple of days, actually, or Friday, I guess. Had a chance to drop back. Decided to stay and pick Cody Simon there. Ohio State captain. I think they call it the big O or something award. Block O, there you go. Block O award. Impressive kid. Called the defense for them, and we're excited to add him. And then we went to 152 in the fifth, and that's where I was starting to get the shakes a little bit. Hadn't done any trades, so figured we have to get one in there. So traded with Dallas, dropped back to 174, and then that got us back into the sixth round. So then at 174, stayed at Ohio State and drafted a corner, Denzel Burke, local kid. Played here at a couple different high schools, Brophy and Saguaro. So two guys from Ohio State there. We got good track record with guys coming from Coach Day's program there, a successful program. And so, Denzel's played a lot of ball there for Ohio State. We're excited to add him. And then with the pick that we got for moving back there at 211, picked Texas offensive lineman Hayden Connor. Hayden spent most of his time at guard, and then pretty cool what Hayden was able to do in the playoff run there for Texas. They had an injury to their center. Hayden bumps over in the middle of the game, I think, right? And then started another game at center. So Hayden, big, strong, massive kid, played all three interior spots, which is always important there on the interior. And then, wrapped up the day in the seventh round and took Keaton Crawford out of Reno. Keaton really stood out to us for his ability on fourth down, his ability to cover kicks and be a disruptive presence. And we also think he's got a chance to develop on defense as well. So, that wrapped up the draft picks. Just kind of we're doing the finishing touches on undrafted free agency. The guys are upstairs still trying to grind that out a little bit, where we'll add a few guys there too. But that was kind of the day, kind of the weekend. Feel good about the guys that we added, and ready to get them in here in just under 2 weeks and get going and start working with them. So that's where we're at. What do you guys got?
What are your thoughts on how it all shook out where you guys took 6 guys on defense and just 1 guy on offense?
Really, that's just how it worked out. Wasn't the plan at all. It's just, it's one of those things where, we stick to the philosophy of staying true to our board. And, I certainly would have loved to add some people on offense, but just the way it worked out, we were always going to take the guy who was higher on our board, and it just so happened that 6 of the 7 guys were on defense. So who knows, next draft how that'll go, but this draft it just leaned towards defense.
Monti, so would you say you trust your board, like you don't divvy too far from that, or like go down it a few players just to say I need to get some offensive guys?
No, never do that, Cam. Yeah, we've talked about that a lot. Can get in trouble doing that and just say, hey, we need to take a lesser player at a position just to say that we took a player at that position. We always feel you can never go wrong taking the player that we have valued higher. So that's what we did.
Hey, in regards to all the guys from Ohio State, it might seem obvious, but I'm curious to hear you explain it. What's the value of adding guys from a winning college program as opposed to getting the best guy at a program that maybe didn't do so well?
I think the first thing, Greg, it starts with is, we're not taking them because they were at Ohio State. We're taking them because the value on our board and it just so happened that they played at Ohio State, So, but I do think there is value in coming from a winning organization, and guys that are used to winning, have seen what it, played at the highest level, played in games that are really, high stakes and through the playoff run there. So, I know those guys, and then, I think another added benefit is the competition that those guys practice against every day. I mean, we said it when we were in there, like, nobody's had to have a tougher assignment in practice the last 4 years than Denzel Burke, the guys he's had to cover in practice. I mean, holy smokes. So, I mean, but, I think it really wasn't like, oh, man, where's the next Ohio State guy? It's just, hey, that's where they fell on our board, and that's how it worked out.
On Cody's assignment, Dave, I saw late boomer attached to him, and like he was defensive MVP in those 2 playoff games. Did you see that sort of in working through him, especially his last year at Ohio State?
Yeah, I mean, he really had a chance this year to kind of run the show for them, and I think his tape improved throughout the year. He had a really strong playoffs, and going back to that championship DNA, like you can see that in this kid, and he certainly has command of the team. And so when you have a command of a elite defense like that says something about your character, your knowledge, because they're not just going to look to anybody. Those guys are all high-level players that turn to this guy to give them direction, so that's a big factor in it.
One thing that stood out from his stats is that he struggled in that first game against Oregon, and then the second game against Oregon did much better. Did that jump out to you guys, kind of bouncing back from that against the same team?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't necessarily put too much emphasis on the first versus the second Oregon game or anything like that. Just the continued progression of the guy's play throughout the year, along through his entire career. I mean, that's what you want. You want guys peaking now as they come into the NFL.
How valuable is it when those guys play in the biggest games in college football? How much does that factor in, or how much do you value that in the process?
You value it because it's obviously a high-pressure environment. The guy plays well in the playoffs in college. There's playoffs in the NFL. We hope to be in very soon. So stuff like that. But it's also, like Monti just alluded to, the matchups. It's good teams against good. The tape's usually going to be good. That's when you see some of your best matchups under the brightest lights. So that's definitely valuable for sure.
I know you said the board fell how it fell in terms of defense, but when it's all said and done, you guys leaned into defense pretty hard in free agency and now this. Was that, when you came into this offseason, was the defense something that you had your eye on in terms of upgrades?
I think really we're trying to upgrade our team everywhere, and I think you're always at the mercy of what the supply is, So, if when we set our free agency board much like we set our draft board, and you try to pick the best spots where we're going to expend our resources, and so, again, certainly. We want to increase competition. We want to increase the talent level across all our positions. It just does so happen that obviously we wanted to get better on the defensive front. There's no question about that. So we had some opportunities to do that. Our needs matched up with what the supply was in free agency, and then kind of continued that through the draft. So, I think again we want to improve everywhere across the board. It just so happened that we had more opportunities to do that defensively this cycle.
Are you in a spot now where, after you sign your undrafted guys, that you kind of like where your roster is heading into the offseason? Are there veteran, specifically with like offensive linemen, would there be any veteran consideration like before we get to training camp?
Yeah, I think there's consideration at every spot, and I think that never really ends, and so I think what's going to happen is there's going to be another round of players that come available here in the next couple of weeks as teams add the players that they drafted and add the players that they sign in free agency. And, our pro department, Glenn Fox, Andrew Kaskin, Andrew Ford, like they do a great job of staying on top of those guys that are available. I mean, anytime we see an opportunity to improve our team, increase competition, we're going to do it.
What did it show you about Hayden that he was able to make that move in such a late part of the season, his career, in such a environment?
I mean, it shows some versatility. It also shows a lot of mental toughness. Highly intelligent kid, especially when we sat down and interviewed the kid. I mean, he's extremely intelligent. You could tell right away, hey, this is a guy that if athletically he can handle it, this guy can play center. He's smart enough. He's got enough on the ball that way. But it also shows like, hey, his coaches trust him, his teammates trust him to go and do a job like that you haven't done on tape, and probably not a ton of reps in practice, honestly, because they have a really good center there, Jake Majors. So it was very impressive in that regard.
You guys mentioned the wide receivers that Denzel had to go up against in practice, but what other things stood out to you when watching him?
I mean, he's a good athlete, you know what I mean? He can run. He's tough. He'll support the run. He's got cover skills. He can play man and zone. Like, he's got a very well-rounded game. I'm not saying he's a perfect player or anything like that, but we see a lot of the elements in him athletically to play corner at the NFL level.
He's a Big Ten guy. It seems to me the Big Ten and SEC were way out in front of everybody else. Are those two conferences that far and away closer to what the NFL competition is?
I mean, I think it's pretty good. Like, I think those two conferences, I think week in and week out, it's hard to win games consistently. So, I think you've seen that reflected in the number of guys that have gotten drafted out of those conferences. It doesn't mean that there's not good players coming from other conferences, but that is high level competition. And it just kind of goes like, hey, there's every week's going to be a new battle, and you're going to have to come to play. You're going to have to show up in big time environments and big stadiums, and so, the transition there may not be as big of a jump as it is for players coming from smaller schools.
Back to the offensive line, what is your comfort level with the current group that you have at guard specifically?
Yeah, I think we have a good group. I think we got a good group in there. I think there's gonna be good competition. I think there's guys in there that have versatility to play multiple spots. I think that's going to be a good competition. We'll add Hayden in there. We signed a couple offensive linemen that you guys will hear about here in a little bit on undrafted free agency. So, there's going to be good competition in that group all along the offensive line. So we're excited to see how that sorts out.
Hayden's profile, how did you feel like he fits with your running scheme, specifically being a gap-heavy team?
Really well. He's a big, strong guy. He can get movement. Texas runs the ball a lot. He's played well in that system, and he holds up really well in pass pro. So I think he's a good fit for what we try to do.
What do you think about your cornerback room at the moment?
I think there's a lot of competition there as well. I mean, we added a bunch of guys last year in last year's draft. We added the guys this year. I think that's going to be a really highly competitive group. We talk about it all the time. You can never have enough corners that can run and cover and take the ball away. It's a passing league. There's always going to be stress on those guys, and so I think the competition's really going to shake out, and whoever can rise to the top of that's going to put us in a good situation.
Dave, I believe every player mentioned on their conference call that they had some sort of formal meeting with the Cardinals at some point in the process, and while it's an all-encompassing process for you guys to make a decision, what is it that you guys are gaining out of those meetings to make you feel convicted on players?
Well, our conviction stems, from the tape first and foremost on the player, and then getting to know the person. The more interactions you can have with these guys, the more times you can sit down in front of them, it only helps to give you a better feel of the person. You can get, quote unquote, fooled in a short 10-minute interview with somebody, but not after you've done it 4 or 5 times, after you've spent a whole day with them. So just the more interactions you can get with these guys, the better. Now, some of these guys, just so happened to work out that way this year. There are times we'll pick a guy or sign a guy that we haven't, we're going to have some interaction, but it might not have been a 30 visit. It might not have been a formal combine interview. But at the school, at the pro day, at some point we're going to talk to these guys, no question.
Which one thing is on that, I read something earlier today that, it doesn't mean – somebody had said that we were 4 for 4 on our first-round picks for 30 visits, which is actually incorrect. Like, we didn't we had Paris in for a 30 visit. We had Marv in for a 30 visit. We did not have D-Rob in for a 30 visit. So I just want to set the record straight, okay? And then we had Walter in, so we're 3 for 4. So as we go next year, I guess the numbers say we're 75% going to take you in the first round if we have it. So do with that what you will.
How would you articulate the type of person you're looking for, the DNA? Is there anything specifically that you can articulate that you're looking for when you're making a pick?
I think when we talk about anybody that we add to our program, maturity, dependability, accountability, team first, guys that are willing to put the team first, I think all those things are important to us. And so, it's just like any interaction. Like, you guys are going to leave here and you're going to stop at the gas station or stop at a restaurant and you're going to have an interaction with somebody and you're going to have a snap judgment. We just so happen to have multiple snap judgments that we have to make and extended meetings with guys that we have to make a call on people and just how they'll fit with what we're trying to do. And so, we're just trying to look for the right type of people that fit into what we're trying to do, that really are going to put the team first, that put the team goals above any individual interest. And so if we can find guys like that have talent on the field, like then it's a good match for coming into our building.
What about the offense as a whole? You've got a lot of guys coming back that are going to be in the system another year. Didn't address a lot in the offseason. So what's your confidence level like that group can take the next
Yeah, I mean, I think the offense will take another jump. I do. I mean, I think we got some guys coming off injury that are going to be back to help us out. I think Trey's still an ascending player. I think Marvin, Mike Wilson, Greg Dortch, Zay Jones, Zave Weaver. I think all those guys, can take a jump in our offense. I think our offensive line played well last year. I think it's a good group, and I think it's going to. I think that whole group's going to have a chance to ascend and build on what they did last year, and I'm excited to get going on that here as on-field activities start here over the next week.
We know that players will talk to you maybe about players they like, but a big amount of the players drafted this year have either been teammates with a Cardinal from high school, college they lined up against, like Marvin Harrison Jr. Did you have in-depth conversations with Cardinals about maybe some of these players you guys were considering drafting just because of their relation?
Absolutely, Dan. We go back and we ask our guys that may have been teammates with a guy in the past year or two. Just get their feel on what the guy is like as a teammate, and we typically handle the evaluation on our end. We don't, we get those opinions too, but I really want to know about the person. I want to know what the guy is like in the locker room, how he is as a teammate, how the work ethic is. Those are the things that are important, and the guys on our team can provide, invaluable insight into that because they've been in the locker room, they've been in practice, they've been in games with those guys. And so absolutely, those are resources that we have used and will continue to use, and our players are great about helping us out with that.
In terms of your evaluations, how do you go about finding a hidden gem? The guy from Reno, for example, how do you evaluate him versus the rest of the competition because he wasn't playing SEC Big Ten kind of ball?
Yeah, Greg, I don't know that there really are hidden gems. I think people just end up liking guys more or less. I mean, I had 3 special teams coaches that I know after we took Keaton in the 7th text me and say, man, that guy was one of my top special teams performers. So, I don't, the idea of hidden gem, I don't know that really exists. I think it's just, some teams, their boards look different, have guys a little higher, a little lower. But, that diamond in the rough, that sleeper typically doesn't happen.
Since you guys got here, Mike linebacker has been a position where you pretty much have the starter play 100% of the snaps, even when Kaiser was down. Do you still see it that way, or do you think there could be a potential for a platoon with this personnel after drafting Cody?
I mean, I think that's all got to sort out once we get to training camp and through the preseason. I think, if you have a guy that wins the job, then great, you go with that. If you have to do, guys have different roles, I think that all sorts itself out. So, we're not married to one philosophy there. I think we're just going to try to put the team in the best position, and however that looks, that's what we're going to do.
Monti, Keane was talking about how much he puts his heart into special teams, and you obviously are very complimentary of that aspect of it. How can you tell that a player actually loves that phase of the game?
I mean, I think that shows pretty easily. I mean, I think for guys to be the first running down the field, to throw their body around, I mean, special teams isn't always the most glorious job. And then when you find a guy who stands out on tape with, his toughness, his physicality, his effort, his finish, I think that says something about a player, and I think it's harder to find that, typically in college, guys tend to graduate from special teams as their roles increase, but to find guys that still continue to give that effort it's pretty cool to see.
You mentioned that you think he can play defense as well. What do you see as his position on defense? He does a lot of things.
Safety. Yeah, we're going to put him in the safety room, and we're going to ask him to do everything that we ask our other safeties to do, and see how he develops.
Dave, what stands out about Will Johnson? When healthy, how do you assess him?
Well, I mean, again, high-level competition. The guy has size. He's a very good athlete. The takeaway ability is pretty rare. I mean, he can read routes, he can jump routes, and then he can catch the ball and make plays with it. Obviously, he's got all the pick sixes, but, that's a guy that can go toe-to-toe, play man coverage against big-time players, and he can make plays that impact the game.
Maybe not bored, but going from 12 to 6 picks this year, did it feel a little slower for you guys?
Yeah, it did. It did. It certainly was different than last year. And we talked about it. We didn't have any trade action until what, the 5th round, and that's, again, it's there wasn't one time in the past 2 drafts where we're like, oh man, let's go find a trade, let's make that. It's really a matter of opportunity, and so. We had some opportunities this year. They, weren't as attractive to us, and so, we like our picks, and we were satisfied with sitting and picking and not just accumulating picks to accumulate. There was guys that we liked, and so it led to a little more not as fast pace, but we like the 7 guys that we added.
So many young guys in the
Josh,
corner.
I think this is the last one.
Yeah, with so many young guys in the corner room, what's a trade-off with having youth against experience at that position?
You want that one?
Sure.
You need to repeat it.
No, I'm good. I mean, hopefully there is no trade-off, you know what I mean? But and when you get guys from these big-time programs like Ohio State and Michigan, they have experience. They have experience against good players, high-level programs, big-time games. So it's not like a guy whose eyes are so wide open coming into the NFL. So hopefully there is some wisdom there when they come in, and then you can lean on some of the vets in the program. I mean, we certainly have a veteran safety room. We have, veteran players on this team. They don't have to just be veteran corners, you know what I mean?
Thank you, guys.